Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Gerard.
So for years, Sammi was an absolute rock star. Hungry, driven, crushing every metric. But over the last 6 months, her performance just fell off a cliff. She was doing the bare minimum, completely checked out, and the culture around her was suffering. Now, the CEO was incredibly frustrated and asked me, like, what happened? She used to be so passionate. And I asked him one simple question, which was, when was the last time you actually asked her how you can keep her challenged? The reality is people plateau, they get bored, and as leaders, we often assume that once someone is in the right seat, that they'll stay happy in that seat forever. But wanting it isn't a permanent state. If you aren't actively having conversations to understand if an employee still truly wants the job as it evolves, and you aren't finding out ways to stretch their capacity until they say uncle, they're going to quietly quit or take a call from a headhunter. I'm Rick Gerard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders like our guest today, Mr. Alex Freytag. Alex is an EOS implementer and the creator of ProfitWorks. So, as I mentioned, he is an expert EOS implementer who empowers entrepreneurial leadership teams to eradicate the entitlement mentality and build highly profitable, values-driven cultures. On the path to helping entrepreneurial leadership teams clarify and achieve their vision, Alex equips leaders with practical tools they need to confidently manage, coach up, or decisively coach out underperforming talent, which is what makes Alex the perfect expert for today's show. Alex, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thank you, Rick. Great to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you and get to know you because we've spent some time together.
Yes.
So I love you're wearing the EOS shirt. So we're going to talk about GWC. Now, for those of the audience that don't really know what GWC is, what's GWC?
Well, I mean, I get into that. I just want to make sure EOS is clear because that'll lead us down the path. But the entrepreneurial operating system, just the top of the waterfall there, is a way of doing business. It's helps leadership teams simplify, clarify their vision, and get on the same page, get aligned. And GWC is a tool within the EOS framework or model. It's a very powerful tool that we use to guide a discussion for the leadership team around whether somebody's in the right seat to be as brief as possible.
Yep. Right person, right seat, right?
Yep.
So GWC is, does the person get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do the work? Those are the three things, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And each of those, if you double click on them, you can go pretty deep within them. So like get it is like genetically encoded to do the job. I think the G is like God-given skill set. It's like it's hardwired, like batteries included. Want it is pretty clear. They either want it or they don't want it. We can get into that too. And then capacity is the one that's a little fuzzy, but it's sort of the skills side of it. It can be taught, it can be learned. And so a lot of teams distinguish or have a tough time distinguish between get it and capacity. Usually want it's pretty clear. But as we go deeper into the conversation, we'll start to distinguish those two especially, but all three of those. If you think about a Venn diagram, obviously we want somebody who's in just yes, yes, yes for all three of those.
Absolutely. That's the goal for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
All right, this is cool because we're going to unpack this, and I but let's kind of still start talking about the problem because we talk about right person, right seat, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
It's not a one-time thing. I mean, it evolves, right? So you could have somebody who's the right person in the right seat, it'll quickly become the wrong person in the right seat. Or, I mean, there's so many variations of just right person, right seat, and it's fluid. It's not a one size fits all. Like once they're in the seat, they're gonna excel with you forever.
The Sammi example that you spoke of in the introduction is a great example of that. At one time, Sammi was right person, right seat, or we say RPRS, right? But
Yep.
something happened, something evolved. I mean, we're dealing with people, and people change, businesses change and evolve, and hopefully, most of the time, growing. And I've got a client. He's been an integrator at a small organization for about 8 years. And he's at the point now where he's not really growing anymore, kind of like Sammi. And it reminds me, EOS Worldwide has a book out called The People Book, came out last year, but they have the GWC Flow channel, which is like an evolution of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi or Stephen Kotler's flow research. And so on one axis, you have the challenge. Is it really challenging or is it not challenging? And you have skills on the other axis. And so that challenge skills sweet spot, if it's too challenging and your skills aren't big enough, you're stressed and you lose interest in it. You're not going to be in the flow state. Or if your skills are really high and it's not challenging at all, you're going to be bored. And Sammi and my client got to the point where it's just not challenging anymore. And they're trying to have conversations with people and like, give me more. I'm hungry. I'm a superstar. I need to keep growing and learning. And they're not getting the response they need. So to your point, they're quietly quitting, or they're going to be open to taking that call, and they're going to be out of there. Which we want the best for everyone. So again, right person, right seat. But it's,
back in my my last lifetime incarnation as a headhunter, that was my bread and butter.
Yeah,
finding people who were bored, finding people who were like under challenged, underutilized in their role, right?
Yeah.
And they might have been doing some great things, but like if they weren't feeling like they were being completely utilized,
yes,
it's a really easy decision for them to make a move.
It is,
and especially if you're not having conversation with them.
That's the part I was going to say is if the boss, whoever that person reports to, is not like tuned into their direct report on a frequent basis. And at EOS, we teach quarterly conversations, one-to-ones that are casual. They're not a review, but they're an opportunity for that boss and that direct report to kind of what's working, what's not working. And that's where that sort of barrier or that concern might come up. If you're, at lunch and you've created an open and honest environment, and that person can say, I'm feeling not challenged. I want to keep growing and I feel like I'm knocking it out of the park. And so I want to talk about that. And it's great opening to a conversation for somebody to be able to add more value to the organization.
Good. You're spot on. So like, we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper, but you're listening to Higher Power Radio Show. For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors. All right. I'm digging in deeper with our guest, founder of ProfitWorks, Alan Freytag. I pronounced your last name right, Alex?
It's not. It's Alex Freytag, and that's okay. It's like fried egg or in tag. So no worries.
Man,
it's easily mispronounced. It's German.
I just made show host issue, stuff you don't do 101 is I don't ask you how you pronounce your last name before we started the show, and I'm like, oh god.
No worries. So, it translates to Freytag, to Friday in German, if that's any help. Freytag is it's a good translation. So
all right, I love it.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, so let's dig into this GWC thing because I have a framework that I kind of set up. This is independent from me running EOS back in the day, but it's actually the framework of pain, desire, and impact, which kind of fits into these three components.
Oh, interesting.
Desire is the wanted, and then the capacity to do it is impact. But there's kind of different elements to it. So the desire and the wanted are so critical, and we don't take into consideration, especially when you're hiring people, how important that is. Because when we're hiring people, we tend to get into, well, this is what I need you to do. And, we sell, but we really don't understand if that's what the person wants to do, if that's going to keep them engaged and keep them, in the game for a while.
Yes. Yeah. And you and I were talking, Rick, about behavioral-based interviewing and to interview for GWC, interview for the wanted. And what would you hear in what the candidate says? that would indicate to you, the interviewer, that they are passionate about it. They're, it just lights their fire. They can get into flow state when they're doing it. They wake up thinking about it. They, it's that kind of excitement that I think in a nonverbal way that the interviewer is kind of trying to discover in the candidate. And so the questions the candidate asks will be really key around that, as well as the answers that the candidate has for the interviewer's questions around the want it piece. Like, why? I mean, you would mention that the other day we were talking, why do you want it? Sell me,
So let's start with get it.
Okay.
So talk me through get it.
Yes, get it is that sort of natural, innate connection with the role, with the function. And in EOS, we always start with structure first and people second. So we build the accountability chart, and a seat on the accountability chart is like, if you picture, it's like an object. It's like, I have this, my son's good at origami, but he made this cube. But if you think about a seat on the accountability chart around all the roles that the organization needs, let's take a sales seat. It's pretty across a lot of different industries. And it might be a sales and marketing leader that we're trying to describe there. And the get it is going to be, does the person, once we've built out that seat, does the person whose name we're considering putting in that seat, get it is going to mean they understand the systems, they understand the culture, they can understand it from 30,000 feet, they understand it in the weeds. It really is intrinsically connected to how they think and how they're wired. And a complete sort of example of a misfit might be taking a finance person who's really great at numbers and spreadsheets and finance and was a controller and just rose up through and just really great at that seat, and put them in a sales seat and have them go out and talk to the customers. And the get it's going to be, no, I don't get it, and they don't want it. But or you take a salesperson and say, you're going to be the finance leader, and they're like, I don't get that at all. I don't want it. And so it's just, there's almost a repel by the individual because it's not in their DNA to sit in that seat, if that makes sense. But it's got to be structure first, and then you bounce different people against it with that get it question. It has to be a hard yes. It can't be like a maybe. Maybe you'll kill you. It's got to be a hard yes. And if it's not 100% yes, just put no. Doesn't mean they definitely can't have it, and probably can't, but at least we're having the conversation around where the gaps are. Some teams, I'll tell you, when we put the seat on the accountability chart together and the 5 bullet points, the roles that make up that seat, you can do GWC or get it for each of the 5 bullets too, which is done in some cases. I'm not suggesting that as a pure teaching of EOS, but I've had clients do that because they want to get into the weeds on the G within each role in there, and it does help the conversation with the leadership team, because maybe the structure is wrong. Maybe that should be 2 seats. Which is a different conversation. So
when we're looking at get it, aren't we really looking at maybe, I think of it in 2 components, right? One, to get the job and the role, and that's where people tend to focus. Like, does this person get what the job is?
Yes. Yeah.
And then the second part would be like, do they get the business or the company? Because those are 2 separate things. The job can be one thing. Like, somebody can be a high performer in a job, but then you put them into a company that they don't really necessarily have the correct DNA for. And essentially what happens, they fail. Yeah. And then we're like scratching our head trying to figure out, God, they had such a great resume and, they've done it before, but they didn't do well here. And then they're wondering why.
So
they don't want to really get the company.
Yeah, and I'll be careful not to conflate or confuse the issue, because what I would say about that last comment is that person is perhaps not a core values fit from the culture standpoint. They might be in the right seat, but they're the wrong person. If you picture a 2x2, we call it the performance values matrix. Jack Welch sort of, at least as far down, originated this thing, but it's a 2x2 where you've got the core values from low to high on the vertical axis, and you got GWC on the horizontal axis. And if this person is in that they're great at the seat, but they don't match the culture, I would try to simplify it by saying wrong person, right seat.
And by the way, that happens all the time. Like that is the classic mishire right there. They have all the skills,
Yeah.
But they come into the environment and there's just friction because they don't fit the corporate environment. They don't match the core values of the business.
You're right. You're right. And that begs the question, are we interviewing for core values on the front side of this? Because it's sort of like stating the rules of the game before the person plays. And that's always fair, I think, if you're going to play a game, know what the rules are before you go in. But when you interview for core values, the behavioral based interviewing is a great way to try to tease that out later in the interview versus early in the interview, because you don't want the candidate starting to answer all their questions, sort of painting the brush as if they're aligned with your core values before you've really had that deeper discussion, if that makes any sense.
I might argue the opposite to that, actually, because
ahead,
you can understand whether or not people align with the behaviors that drive the core values. I think where we run into trouble a lot of times that I've seen with businesses,
Yes.
they have core values, which are the words like integrity, but they don't have a
Yeah.
definition of what integrity means in their business, right? They don't have a measurable
Sometimes.
behavior behind it that you can evaluate somebody for. So you guess.
True. We in EOS run companies, we wouldn't have that just because we help the team design for themselves a core values speech. And so that if you double click on, and let's not take integrity, that's more permission to play, but maybe teamwork or something like that. When you see teamwork, what does that mean at XYZ company? It means A, B, and C. And it's kind of a script or a cheat sheet for the interviewer to say what it means to the candidate, so that the candidate can tell a story around how they exhibited teamwork in their past lives and try to sort of sell or position themselves as a core values fit somewhere in that interview. And a lot of times,
here's the thing we're missing.
Yeah.
Candidates lie in interviews.
They do. Yeah. Which is the danger of.
If you feed people answers, smart people are going to pick it up and just feed it back to you, right? So, you know, again, ultimately, you want to get to the truth about who the human is, and if you allow them to tell you unprompted, you'll get more accurate answers.
I agree. The suggestions that I had around it, and I'm not a professional, interview coach, but was, if one of your core values is, let's say it's grow or die. Like at US Worldwide, we have a grow or die. If you're not growing, you're dying. We disdain the status quo. We might ask the question of a candidate, would you say, one of our core values is grow or die, would you say that you subscribe to that? And the person's going to say, oh yeah, absolutely. And you're going to say, tell me an example of how you exhibited grow or die in your prior world. And they'll have to come up, they have to tell a story, like a specific, truthful story where they exhibited grow or die, and it begs a conversation and say, great, tell me another one. So you start to dig deep, have them become convicted of the fact that they truly are grow or die. And you can kind of see the mask. Hopefully the mask is coming down, or the wall is coming down a little bit, and you're starting to get more truth in that. But to your point, it has to be very intentional in that conversation.
For sure. Yeah. No, and you know what, like, so you're uncovering the behavior. I just, you know what, like as a headhunter, like I've always, I've gotten burned by more, what I like to call like bad actors, right? People who are really good interviewers, but they're terrible at keeping a job.
Oh, right.
And what I found was in the storyline, you can create a good high level story.
Yeah.
But if you don't test it and dig a couple layers down, my grandma used to always say the devil's in the details. She was like this little devout Catholic lady, and that was her, her thing. Especially making apple pie. But it was really funny because that's something that always stuck with me, is that, that and probably watching Columbo as I was growing up, you keep digging deeper into okay, well, you just said this, like, walk me through exactly how you did that. You'd be amazed on how quickly, like, that one question, like, walk me through the steps you took to do that, opens up like the whole truth.
Absolutely.
Because I found that high performers they get really excited and they get into the details. Okay, so first I did this, and then and they can piece together this whole picture.
Right. That's very cool.
But the bad actors, that's when they tend to shut down.
Well, because they like to sort of drift across their wave tops instead of going deep, and hope they can skate through. Especially if you're interviewing for perhaps a social position, like a sales person that likes telling stories and likes a little bit of the a little bit of the sizzle in there,
Yeah.
and so it's just a caution. It's certainly not necessarily a showstopper, but can be.
So let's dig into, okay, so we got the get it, right? I mean, this is really now like let's talk about wanted, because I think that
Yeah.
this is often the piece that's really overlooked. I think it's sometimes assumed that they want it because us as interviewers assume that everybody wants to work with us.
That's right.
And it could just be that they need a job.
Yeah.
So I like to look at like wanted as what is their true desire? Do they really desire, number one, are they a company like ours? So are they positioned right for my size business?
Yeah.
This is something that I don't think a lot of people test. And it's we make the assumption, hey, this person came out of a great company. They should do great here.
Yeah.
The worst hire that I've ever seen in my career, that I've seen happen over and over and over again, has been the company who's a small business who hires somebody from a large company, like a name brand company.
Yeah.
And then, they're expecting these huge things with no resources, and they expect this person to do great things and they fail. And it happens 99.9% of the time.
Mm.
And it's purely because they're not positioned right for this size company. Like it's not in their DNA.
Yeah, and you've seen it. It sounds like where the company can outgrow the person, and the want it
Yeah.
disappears because the seed is too big. It's beyond their. It's like the Peter principle, right? So, but it's beyond their want. Even if it pays right, that object I was talking about has a lot of characteristics, and if those roles continue to expand, and the person instead of 100% of their time is at 120% of their time, and they're just spread so thin, and they start dreading coming to work, and we're not having the conversation around structure. Is this the right structure? And within that, because it might be that the company's grown to a new structure, it always evolves as the company grows. Then we need to be addressing, perhaps the person needs a direct report so they can start, or they need to be trained how to delegate and elevate, right? One of the tools in EOS, let go of the vine, the things that are not your highest and best use, so that 100% stays there, because we want that GWC, and the W can fade away if we continue to ignore burnout. If it's like, suck it up, this is the way it is here, you're going to burn people out and you have a high turnover and all that kind of thing. So it's a very real, the want it is a very real conversation starter with leadership teams.
That is such a great point. That's such a great point. So does the person want this? And they've got to be telling you that they really want this. It's not
Yes.
like, hey, I want you to do this. I found that there's so much more power when somebody says, yes, I want this, and here's why.
Yes. Yeah. Love that.
Um,
The why part, if they can passionately describe, as you were saying earlier, the why they want it, and it's, you can feel it, whether it's coming from their heart or their head, you're going to know. And as you said, people will lie, and either they want a job or they want the money or whatever the reason is. But if we start to get behind that and understand, more of the personal core focus for the individual, like what their highest and best use is, what they love to do and what they're great at, the want it you'll hear it. It'll be like a song,
yeah.
which is very cool.
This is just the one thing that I've seen that solidifies a great hire.
Yeah.
Is if the person really wants it. Now there's this psychological thing that happens sometimes when a candidate or a person kind of demonstrates to the company that they really want it. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that scenario where they think, well, there's got to be something wrong with this person because they want this really bad. Do you know what I mean? And like, there's this tendency to shy away from people. It's kind of like that. Remember when you were in elementary school and you found out like somebody had a crush on you when you were younger, and you're like, oh, they're gross. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that scenario. I've noticed that there's like this, they want it too much, sort of scenario that happens.
I would, I guess, put up, my spidey sense would be up if I saw that, but I'd also be pretty encouraged, because I do want I do want passion, but it shouldn't be weird, right?
That's for sure true. Like you definitely don't want it to be weird.
Yeah. But that's one of the easier ones when we're doing, we're building the accountability chart in a session, or we're rebuilding it, or restructure it, that kind of thing. The want it usually is like a very quick answer. And I think to your point, it would be okay to slow that down a little bit and discuss why, because it's not all about money, right?
Yeah.
It might be. Does it have everybody like the boss? You probably know the data. People don't quit companies; they quit bad bosses. And do they have a team of people? Or are they going to be able to build a team of people in that role that they're in? So the want it has a lot of like little tentacles that you could explore to test it, to really get them to think more thoroughly about just willy-nilly. Yeah, I want it.
Yeah, I met a guy not too long ago. He was on the show. His name is Brian, and he does this thing with his employees. He meets with them once a quarter, and it was this game of red light, green light.
Okay.
So, hey, do you really want this job? Like
back to elementary school. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean that's basically. He doesn't shoot them if they move or anything like that. But,
gotcha.
But what was interesting is that he has this 5-minute conversation with them every quarter, and it's like 10 questions, and it's like and it's to get them engaged and talking about like whether or not they really GWC. And it was fascinating on how, like, if somebody doesn't want it anymore, then he helps them to find that place that they do want to be, even if it's outside of the organization.
Absolutely. No, it's I have an example of that. So I was one of the founders of the EOS conference back in 2017, and it was just a startup little bootstrap thing, right? But we eventually turned it over to EOS Worldwide. And when we turned it over, COVID hit, and I became the MC, which is I can do the MC, but I'm just not my unique ability. And I did it virtually for COVID, and it was fun. And then I did it in 21 in Houston, and I did it in Orlando. And I was having a conversation with the leader who I reported to on the EOS Worldwide leadership team, and she said, "Do you really want this?" Because the organization, or the conference, is like 2,000 people. It used to be like 300. It's a different game on that stage.
Yeah.
And so I said, that's a really great question. And we were taking a walk, and we talked through it. It was really healthy. And I decided, I don't want that. I can do it, but I can and want two different things. I'm not passionate about it anymore. I don't. And so we found an alternative, which has been great since that time. So, but it's nice conversation starter to have healthy, open and honest dialogue about it, instead of just assuming that everybody just wants the job that they're given.
All right, so let's break down capacity, because there's different components to capacity, right?
Yeah, right.
And I think I don't want to go super over on time, but I think this is pretty. This correlates to kind of impact for me, which is capacity is essentially impact is capacity plus growth, right? Like so break down capacity for me.
Yeah, in its purest form within EOS, we teach the capacity is somebody who has the capacity has the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual capacity to do the job. Those are many of them learned abilities. If you think about the big one that I didn't mention is time capacity. And so oftentimes we'll say, they have the emotional, physical, the spiritual, the mental maturity and capacity for the job, but they don't have the time. That's a great conversation to have, because it might be a structure issue, or it could be that the person's not delegating enough, or whatever it is. So we have other tools that we can help them with that. But that's basically, I think of it as intellectual capacity. And so if the job takes, this, I'm using my hands like a ball, it takes this much capacity, and the person has this much, and they don't have the ability to grow with that, to learn, to really to become a rock star in that seat, they're in the wrong seat. Maybe the seat's outgrown them, and it needs a higher level leader in it, or whatever it might be. But it's the start of a conversation. So capacity is different from the get it, which is more intrinsic, hardwired, and the capacity is more external, extrinsic, if that makes sense. Does that help?
Yeah, for sure. So where did the skills come into play?
That's within this C
Yeah.
capacity sleeve of the GWC, and
So
sometimes
that's kind of the mental capacity, essentially.
I think you're right. And there are probably arguments to be made in different, depends on what what intellectual capability or skill are you thinking of, but we could probably put it into different subcategories. But I don't want to overthink it, right? I don't want to get into the. It's supposed to be a guide for conversation around, and if somebody you think has the capacity, they don't have it right now, but they have the potential to have the capacity in like 18 months if they get trained and they get mentored and they have these bosses and they go to these classes and they do this thing, and you want to invest in them and you have the time to do that. Awesome. If their core values fit and the G is there and the W is there, but you're trying to build the C, I would say go for it. Most growing companies don't have the time to wait for that 18 months, and they need the capacity filled right now. So they make other decisions. They might bring somebody in on top of that. I've had controllers that are sitting in here on the leadership team in the finance seat, and the company really needs a CFO. And a lot of us who are entrepreneurs just say, that's finance. Controller, you can call bookkeeper, it's finance. It's all the same thing to me. That's not true. CFO is very different from a controller, from a bookkeeper. So you want to have those conversations. And this one company that is a recent example, they ended up having a conversation with the controller and saying, hey, machine time is our number. We got it. And he wasn't able to kind of GWC that, to see that. And so we brought in a fractional CFO who's helping guide this longtime controller. He's a great guy. He's great for the company. He just doesn't have that capacity. So they're helping bolster his capacity with an external fractional CFO that is just, it's having a huge impact on the organization. It'll be temporary too. So it's a good investment. And then this person's retiring in like 12 months. So there's a lot of loyalty there and so forth. But anyway, it's a common thing for the capacity to be a big point of discussion.
Shoot, you know what? We're getting pretty close on time. Alex, what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that can plug into the business today?
2 or 3 key takeaways?
Yep.
I will say the GWC flow channel is one. So the challenge, skills, sweet spot. In having people have enough challenge in the job so they don't get bored, but enough skills so we're helping people develop and grow so that they can stay in that flow state and really knock it out of the park. So that's one tool. You can Google it and find more about it. It's in the People book of EOS Worldwide, which is a great book. A second one would be—
I actually have it here.
Do you have the People book there? That's great.
Yeah.
We didn't talk a lot about core values, but obviously if you've got somebody who's in the right seat, but they're the wrong person, a lot of times they cannot turn over that. They're toxic to the culture. So you have to make tough decisions. But the People Analyzer is the go-to tool. It's not a report card, but use plus, minus, and minus as the guide. Don't use like 1, 2, 3 or get a number system, whatever. It's not the way. It's supposed to be a guide for having a conversation about somebody that might be toxic for the culture, even though they're a rock star on the GWC side of things. So it's possible that they need to have those tough conversations and really dig into and be intentional about that person, if they can change or not. So that would be 2 of them. The entrepreneurial time system is probably the third, Rick. And if you think about a seat on the accountability chart, that cube I was talking about is 100% of somebody's time. We want to have a conversation around how much is cultural of that time, like per week. Are you a 40-hour-a-week company? Or are you a 55-hour-a-week? And what does 100% look like within that? Because if somebody's at 120, there's a lot of balls are going to get dropped, or things are going to fall through the cracks, or they need to figure out how to delegate or automate or don't do or quit, all those kind of discussions. So it's really powerful. So look up the entrepreneurial time system as well within Traction, the book Traction. It's discussed in there, and some other of the EOS Mastery series. So hopefully that's helpful.
That's super helpful. Alex, thanks so much for your time investment today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience can find you and connect up with you?
Thanks, Rick. Probably the easiest is alexfreytag.com, and it's FREYTAG.com. That'll start you out, and then it'll take you to the EOS Worldwide microsite, or if you can dive deeper on that, or it'll take you to ProfitWorks from there. ProfitWorksLLC.com is the other one to dive deeper on, like incentive plans and business literacy for leaders and the teams in the company. So, but thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to share and to be with you guys.
Absolutely. And I encourage you guys to reach out to Alex because he is awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. A quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share after all this show's for you. Send us emails because we want to get valuable content to you continually week after week. You can check us out further at Hire, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at rick@intertrue, it's intertru.ai. I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Gerard.